This is VOA Africa. Hello, I'm Vincent Makori, Africa 54 Managing Editor. It's Friday, December the 4th. This is Africa 54. Now, due to the global outbreak of COVID-19, Voice of America is taking every necessary precaution to safeguard its employees. So our broadcast will look a little different today and in the near future as we, out of an abundance of caution, reduce staffing at the VOA headquarters here in Washington. We're working to help keep you informed about what is going on, and we appreciate you staying with us on Africa 54. Well, we begin in Ethiopia, where providing swift humanitarian relief into Tigray region is a challenge because aid workers do not yet have unimpeded access, according to a senior European Union official. Speaking at a refugee camp in Sudan on Thursday, Janez Lenarcic, a European Commissioner for Crisis Management, also said the EU has had no contact with more than 100 of its citizens in Tigray since the conflict began. As the Ethiopian government claims victory in what it says is a law enforcement campaign in the Tigray region, journalists say the government's internet and telecom shutdown during the conflict has made independent verification difficult. Additionally, local journalists face intimidation, detention, and harassment. VOA's Salim Solomon has the story.
As conflict erupted in the Ethiopian region of Tigray last month, residents of the northern part of the country reported that internet, mobile phone, and landline communications were cut. Journalists say the government-imposed blackout has made it virtually impossible to get accurate information about the conflict.
We've had journalists, publication houses speaking out and saying that essentially it's incredibly difficult to document what's happening on the ground because it's, you're unable to contact sources. It's difficult to verify what you're hearing. And it's in this kind of environment where the work of journalists becomes difficult, perhaps where you might even see misinformation going unchecked.
The federal government said the Tigray incursion is a limited military action against some members of the Tigray People's Liberation Front, or TPLF, after it attacked a military base. But the TPLF calls it a war against Tigray, one that its forces continue fighting. At crucial moments like the late November push by the Ethiopian military to retake the northern city of Mekelle, news outlets were unable to verify facts about the conflict. Federal forces said they had retaken airport in Mekelle and a key military post while avoiding civilian casualties. TPLF said there were widespread civilian casualties and that federal forces were shelling the city center. Major news outlets ran disclaimers saying they could not independently verify claims.
The jobs that journalists do are most crucial at moments like this. It's at moments like this that we must be jealously guarding the gains that we've had in freedom of the press. We need journalists to inform us of the ongoing humanitarian crisis to ensure that, if there are atrocities or, other injustices being carried out, those responsible ultimately are held accountable. We need journalists shining a light on what's going on.
This is not the first time Ethiopian government has switched off communication when tension flared in the country. In 2019, there were widespread communication blackouts following a coup attempt in the Amara region. In June, the government shut down the internet in the Oromo region following the killing of a well-known singer, Hachalu Hundessa, whose death led to violent clashes. Despite the central government's tight control of the internet and communications infrastructure, it said the blackout in Tigray was conducted by the Tigray regional government.
We are not the one who cut the telecom connectivity in Tigray. It is the TPLF that cut the telecom connectivity with a view to keep the Tigrayan people incommunicado from the rest of the world, so that they will continue to be fed from the false TPLF propaganda. Now we are working with experts to reconnect the telecom connectivity, and in some places it has already been restored.
Ethiopian officials are also controlling the flow of information by arresting journalists. According to Reporters Without Borders, at least 6 journalists were arrested in the first week of the conflict. One of those arrested, Medhane Ogbamikael, contracted COVID-19 while behind bars. Momo said that justification for the arrests is vague and journalists have been denied access to legal representation.
It's unclear why these individuals are being detained. we're still trying to investigate that, to perhaps hear from our sources, what might be the likely motivations. But the lack of transparency, is something that is unacceptable. At the very least, family, colleagues, lawyers should be made aware immediately why an individual journalist has been arrested.
Reporters in the country say the crackdown has included in-person and online harassment of journalists and is having a chilling effect on the ability of the media to freely and accurately cover the conflict. Samuel Getachew is a journalist with the Reporter newspaper based in Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa.
Whenever any of our colleagues are arrested, we don't care if that person is Tigray or Oromo, or we see them as an Ethiopian, we see them as colleagues. Any good society should leave the media alone because it's an important institution.
Samuel is concerned that Ethiopian journalists will leave the profession, making way for foreign actors.
When passionate people leave the media, it ends up being a PR, mostly Chinese companies implementing their ideas and pushing us to be like them. There's nothing wrong with being like China, but, many of us prefer to be like Ethiopia. We might take different ideas from here and there, but we are passionate. We were born here.
Reports suggest that the government has now granted the United Nations full access to the northern region of Tigray, and Ethiopia's sole provider, Ethio Telecom, said services partly resumed in cities including Humera, Dansha, Maikadra, and Maitz Abri. Salim Solomon, VOA News, Washington.
U.S. lawmakers Thursday held a hearing on the conflict in Ethiopia. A House of Representatives Foreign Affairs subcommittee heard from a number of experts about the impact of fighting in the northern Tigray region. California Congresswoman Karen Bass opened the virtual event by discussing the competing interests and differences of opinion among Ethiopian Americans regarding the conflict.
When we decide to have a hearing, it is with great consideration, and mainly the push to have this hearing came from the diaspora. Sometimes it's difficult for us, though, to make a decision to have a hearing, because then when we do, people want us to represent one side or the other. And that's not the role for us to play here in Congress. So hopefully you will find this hearing productive, and you will understand that we are committed to the U.S. playing a productive role and assisting Ethiopia find its way to peace and unity. And this hearing is and the resolution is just one step forward. It will not be the last.
New Jersey Congressman Chris Smith says Ethiopians have shown great resilience in times of famine and locusts, and is confident they can overcome present challenges as well.
Ethiopia, as we all know, is a great country, a proud nation whose roots date back thousands of years to the Old Testament. It retained its independence where others didn't. It's the seat of the African Union and a world leader. Its soldiers help keep peace in other countries in conflict, and its cultural and artistic influence is widespread. It is therefore absolutely imperative that Ethiopia not succumb to internal division and ethnic hatred. Ethiopia is far too important, not just for the Ethiopian people, but for the entire Horn and Africa as a whole. It must overcome this year of crisis and crises and return to being an example, an inspiring example to be followed.
Among those who testified at the virtual hearing was Addis Standard Magazine editor-in-chief, Stella Mwangi. She says accusations of ethnically motivated violence in Ethiopia deserve neutral investigation.
As a result of a deeply polarized society, no other institution, from Ethiopia's Human Rights Commission to Amnesty International to Human Rights Watch, earns the trust of Ethiopia's polarized society to conduct such important task the same way as a UN-mandated and a politically insulated investigation team should.
Lauren Blanchard is an African affairs specialist with the Congressional Research Service, which provides nonpartisan analysis to U.S. lawmakers. She told the hearing that the lack of communications with Tigray makes it difficult to know what has happened there.
On the information blackout, with phone and internet connections to Tigray down and journalists prevented from accessing most of the region, it's very difficult to know what's happening there. The extent of internal displacement and humanitarian need are still unclear. The press suggests that thousands have been killed, but there are no reliable estimates on the scale of the casualties. Prime Minister Abiy says no civilians were killed in the government's operations, but some refugees are telling a different story.
Susan Stigent is the Director of Africa Programs at the U.S. Institute of Peace. She says the conflict impacts Ethiopia's ongoing political transition.
The reverberations resulting from the violence have exacted intolerable costs, humanitarian, human, economic, food security, and Ethiopia's own regional leadership. And these have provoked core questions about the trajectory of the transition and should provoke a fundamental reassessment of U.S. policy.
Congresswoman Bass says this crisis exemplifies Ethiopia's decades-long debate between decentralized and centralized governance. She says Prime Minister Abiy has taken steps to begin a process of respectful dialogue required for long-term political reform, but an atmosphere of what she calls democratic backsliding and ethnic and political violence threatens to reverse that progress. Manse, the traditional king of the Ga state in southern Ghana, is calling on Ghanaians to maintain peace during the election process. King Taki Teiko Churu II also called on the officials of the Electoral Commission and security agencies to carry out their respective duties with impartiality. His remarks came after leaders of the political parties and their representatives, including presidential candidates, paid a courtesy call on him in the Ghanaian capital, Accra. VOA's Peter Clote sat down with the Ga King and asked him about his message to the candidates and the Ghanaian people.
Being Ghanaian is advanced citizenship. You have to want it, because what plays an integral part of who we are as Ghanaians is our culture, our norm, and as usage. The tradition is so diverse, and yet it brings you out as a man. In spite of chaos, you're calm. And that's what we expect to happen. True leadership is being able to accommodate an opponent, an advocate, speaking on top of his voice, things that you will take 3 years to say in 3 minutes, and yet you say, this is my brother. We are competing. That's all that it is. It never goes beyond the line of that.
Recently, there was a by-election in Ayawaso, West Wuogon, part of the place that you rule over. People are expressing concern that there could be a repeat. As the overlord of the Ga state, what do you tell those who have something to do with this in order to ensure that your state remains peaceful?
I think to the candidates, especially the parliamentary candidates, it's incumbent on them to advise their supporters to keep calm. I think after they vote, they should leave the rest of the job to the Electoral Commission and the security agencies. The security agencies, I think, is also, the onus is on them to keep the peace and make sure that people behave in proper conduct. And then to the Electoral Commission, we want a peaceful election.
Your Majesty, you know, during election time, there are rumors, there are suspicions. The umpire usually gets the blame for being biased towards one against the other. People express skepticism and sometimes suspicions.
What is important is us. I think that it's important that we realize that it is not an individual interest. It's a corporate goal that we as Ghanaians go through before, during, and after these elections very peacefully. And that should be the mark and prime beyond everything else.
What should be the expectations of Ghanaians as they go to the polls to choose A, their president, or two, to choose their representatives by way of lawmakers to help in building the country up.
What should be the expectation?
Yes.
I think they should expect nothing but how Ghana has always run its elections. By all means, there will be a few flashes here and there because, like you say, there'll be suspicion, there'll be mistrust, people will be skeptical about the number of issues. All in all, I think that we are God-fearing people, and it is up to us to keep the faith and keep calm and allow the agencies and then the Electoral Commission mandated to do this job, to do their task. And I think after that, we would have no fear, but a free and fair election. Yes, that should be the expectation.
Well, that was viewers Peter Claude speaking to King Eteke Teiko Tsuru, the second of Ga State in Accra, Ghana. Well, we're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also, check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come, Kenyan Norwegian singer Stella Mwangi talks about her music and how it all began. We'll be right back.
Hello, welcome to Straight Talk Africa, live from the Voice of America headquarters here in Washington. I am Shaka Sali. Straight Talk Africa, we call it like it is. We discuss issues that reflect the interests of our audience without fear or favor. We are guided by facts, and I look at myself as a servant of nothing but the truth.
Welcome back to Africa 54. With President-elect Joe Biden set to take office on January the 20th, Silicon Valley is preparing itself for a new administration while it faces pressure on several fronts, including antitrust, online speech, and digital privacy issues. Michelle Quinn reports.
My fellow citizens, I stand here today.
When President Barack Obama took office in 2009, a close relationship bloomed between Washington and Silicon Valley. Flash forward 12 years. On January 20, Obama's Vice President Joe Biden is set to become the next U.S. president. This time, however, the relationship will be different.
Even as a member of the Obama administration, I will say there was a soft spot for Silicon Valley that perhaps was more of a blind spot. I don't think you're going to see that here. I think people's eyes are wide open in this administration.
What's changed? Tech grew. It became the center of the global economy, shaping commerce, online speech, workplaces. In recent years, elected officials and activists have complained about so-called big tech over issues such as competition and digital privacy. During the presidential campaign, Biden's team criticized Facebook for misinformation on the site, and candidate Biden talked about creating an economy that worked more fairly for more people, a sign, some say, the president-elect will be interested in looking at tech's power. Biden might continue to scrutinize tech firms as the Trump administration, U.S. states, and congressional leaders have done over allegations of anti-competitive behavior.
We are particularly concerned about competition and the power of the largest tech platforms. And I am looking forward to more attention on those issues in the Biden administration.
For its part, the tech industry is prepared for any scrutiny it may receive.
These tech companies have gotten so big because they give customers what they want. So I'm very much mindful and appreciative of the fact, and a lot of people in America are too. I think that these companies are prepared for that kind of scrutiny, and I'm sure that they will be very forthcoming in going over all their business practices.
With a Biden administration, Silicon Valley has some things on its wish list. A national privacy law and changes in immigration rules, to name just two. Tech critics and tech itself want to get more people online, particularly in rural America. The president-elect is reportedly working with Democratic lawmakers to prepare a massive increase and federal broadband spending.
In rural America, there is not even a network to connect to, right? There's not even a broadband network if you had the money to connect to, but also deal with the problem, which is frankly much bigger, of people who can't afford broadband because it's too expensive.
As the new administration comes in, all eyes will be on how the relationship between Silicon Valley and Washington unfolds. Michelle Quinn, VOA News, Oakland, California.
Mali's iconic Bamako Hippodrome has reopened its traditional horse races on Sundays after months of being closed due to COVID-19. Horses are ingrained in Mali's culture, and youth flock to the races in droves. Annie Riesenberg reports from Bamako.
Every Sunday since 1946, spectators have flocked to the racetrack in Bamako's Hippodrome neighborhood, named after the track itself, to watch the horses run. Mahamadou Tangara was one of those spectators as a child. Now a professional jockey, he has won numerous championships and represented Mali in races abroad.
I saw the great jockeys, how they raced the horses, so since that day I decided that one day in the future I'm going to be a jockey.
The various empires that ruled Mali throughout its history depended on horses for transport and for the strength of their armies. Under French colonial rule, horse racing around a circular track was brought to Mali in the early 1900s.
There are so many cultural manifestations that are done by horse or around horses. Even in the past, during the pre-colonial period, the power of an army was measured by its number of cavalry.
In March, the races were abruptly stopped due to COVID-19. For jockeys like Tangara, this meant a complete loss of income. On any given Sunday, a jockey can win between $91 and $182 in prize money.
All I felt was difficulty, just hard times, because if we work, we win something. If we don't work, we win nothing. So we had 8 months where we didn't work.
The races started up again on November 15th, and immediately, the sport's large, loyal audience returned to the track.
Equestrian sports play this main role in terms of the public who attend different activities. It's huge. For my part, I will say that in terms of the audience, it's number one.
But soon after the races were reopened, COVID-19 cases again rose sharply in Mali. Some of the jockeys and the organizers wear masks, but most of the audience is indifferent to COVID precautions. Officials are now discussing new COVID-19 countermeasures, which could include shutting down the races. The jockeys would lose their livelihoods again. But Dansoko says the community is ready to accept another shutdown if it will save lives. Annie Riesenberg for VOA News, Bamako, Mali.
Nearly a decade ago, a Kenyan Norwegian singer made music history in Europe by doing just what her grandmother told her. Today, Stella Mwangi continues to draw on her Kenyan roots as her music gains massive popularity around the world. She's become a favorite in the Hollywood TV series and movie production scene. On the international runways of American fashion designer Tommy Hilfiger, in Samsung Galaxy S9 and S9 Plus advertisements, and the Ubisoft dance rhythm game Just Dance. VOA's Heather Maxwell joins the superstar in Norway by way of this virtual interview to retrace her early breakthrough and how it's led her to her most current successful work, Maito.
Hello, Stella. How are you?
What's up, Heather?
So you're in Oslo, Norway?
Yes, in the ice-cold Oslo right now.
I want to revisit the past for just a minute before I ask you about what's happening in your life right now, because in 2011, you made history with your song and your music video and your performance, Haba Haba.
That song still, it's so precious to me, you know, because those are wisdom words from my grandparents. Yes. From the elders in my family, because I've always been someone who always rushed things, you know, and they've always been like, just take step by step by step. Mm-hmm. And before you know it, you know, your glass is already full, you know.
Well, you made history with Eurovision Song Contest, and you were the first Black woman, as an African woman, as a Kenyan woman, to be singing in the contest in an East African language, right? And it was the first time that Norway had an African woman representing Norway.
You know, I came here with my family in '92 as a political refugee. But they hadn't seen so many, you know, foreigners at all. So I was going through the hardest time of my life. But the most beautiful thing is that this contest, there are actually, you know, it's people voting. And in my year, it was like a record of how many people were voting because, you know, Norway really proved the rest of the world that, you know, music, it's not about color, it's not about any of that. It's about the feeling that you're giving to and the honesty that you're giving to. And that was just history.
So let's come to today now.
Anthem song for Just Dance 2020. You know, Africa is really being put into light right now in terms of the music and the culture, fashion, everything. So I wrote Maito. Maito means our truth. And Maito also means our mother. It's actually praising the truth. So people are dancing to a very spiritual song. Maito, Maito, Maito.
I love the Afro-futuristic craziness of this. Can you give us a little hint or a flavor of one of the songs that you are going to quickly reveal in 2021?
One song that I'm coming out with is called Long Way Coming. It's produced by a Finland producer. He's very young. He's called Aaron Salvatore. And that song, I'm speaking out on where I have been, you know, the storms that I've been through.
And if we want to follow you, how can everybody, you know, keep track of what Stella's up to?
Yes, it's Stella Mwangi everywhere. Stella Mwangi on Instagram, on Twitter, Stella Mwangi official on Facebook. And
Stella everywhere. Thank you so much, Stella Mwangi. It has been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much, Heather. It's been my pleasure too. You have a nice...
For today, be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.